President Obama and the White House are out today touting the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. White House Chief of Staff Jack Lew said this about what the president calls a penalty and the court calls a tax.
If there's going to be a debate about taxes, we welcome that debate. Under this administration, we've cut taxes for middle-class families by $3,600. In this very bill, this health care bill, it cuts taxes for middle-class families another $4,000. The only thing in this bill that puts a burden on individuals to pay more is a penalty for those who can afford insurance and choose not to buy it. And to be clear, that's 1% of the population.
Now, Republicans say they are determined to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Joining me now is GOP Congresswoman Blackburn from Tennessee. Congresswoman, thanks for spending time with us today.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
All right. You released a statement after the Supreme Court ruling on the health care law, and it read this, quote, that the president has consistently told the American people that this mandate was not a tax. This decision serves as yet another example of the lack of transparency and honesty coming from this administration, and it shows their willingness to lie so they can impose their will on the American people, end quote. Congresswoman, what is the lie?
Well, look at the number of taxes. You can look at those that came into play, whether it was in 2010, 2011, 2013. There are another new, through today, we have had 9 new taxes put in place. You're going to have another 6 or 7
Which are the taxes that you're talking about that are the lie, though?
You could, all of them. This wasn't a tax. Remember all of the argument that we went through and the discussion, whether we were in committee with the bill, whether we were debating it on the floor. It was, this isn't a tax. This isn't going to be a tax. All we're going to do is penalize you if you don't take an action. That's why we ended up at the Supreme Court. And I have to tell you, the individuals that I'm talking with are saying quite clearly, this is going to be a jobs killer. The American people want to get jobs.
The White House is calling this a penalty, Congresswoman.
Well, I think that the Supreme Court called it a tax, didn't they? So my hope is,
that's right.
Since the Supreme Court
it is a Supreme Court that did say it was a tax. It was not the White House. So was it a lie? It doesn't sound like it was a lie because they did never at any point state that it was a tax.
You know what is so interesting about this is through the entire debate, it was not going to be a tax. It was going to be all focused on making certain that there was this benefit there. But we all know that when Congress and when you have a health care plan and you are betting on long-term savings from these near-term costs, they're never realized. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at TennCare, which was the test case for Hillary Clinton health care here in Tennessee, or if you're looking at this. There is no example on the face of the earth where a government-run takeover of health care has provided lower cost, better access, and better outcomes for people, for individuals.
Well, in this case, Congresswoman, the CBO, the nonpartisan group that assesses such programs, have said if this Affordable Care Act were not to go through, it would cost hundreds of billions more for the government. So it looks like, at least when we look at a nonpartisan group evaluating the CBO, this Affordable Care Act, it makes sense financially. But I want to drill down a little bit more on what that 1% is. When we look at the number,
what we have is $500 billion in new taxes. And you can go to my website, blackburn.house.gov. We've got a link there. Pull them down, look at them. You can see the ones that went on the books in 2010. You can see the ones that went on the books in 2011, 2012, what will roll onto the books in 2013. You can go through all of these. There are 10 years of new taxes that are there.
Specific to the Affordable Care Act, though.
That's right. All of these are specific to the Affordable Care Act.
When we look at the CBO and its evaluation, it's very clear, they're a nonpartisan group, that this is beneficial to the government, and we look at the deficit and the cost to the government.
No,
but I do want to move on. I do want to move on to something that is important, if we can.
Because the CBO, there was great discussion about the CBO.
One last comment, Congresswoman, and then we'll move on, all right? Because I do want to hit a couple other points before we run out of time with you. Go ahead.
That's fine. The CBO, there was quite a bit of discussion when CBO came out with those scores in 2009. I think that you remember that, because they were looking at adjustments and this cost to the states and not considering all of that cost that would be transferred to the states through this process. So there was quite a bit of debate about how accurate those numbers were, and I'm sure that individuals can go back and look at some of those articles and the discussions about how CBO arrived at those numbers.
CBO's numbers were revised periodically throughout the last 2 years. There were also outside groups that did look at the CBO numbers. They did find some different numbers in terms of the outcome, but they did see savings as well, according to these other nonpartisan independent groups.
They also
but we're going to move on, because you agreed to this, Congresswoman. I want to talk about this number. We can put up this 4 million number. 4 million people are expected not to accept this plan, even though they can afford insurance on their own. They will be the ones that will be affected. This is about only 1% of the population. So when we look at the penalty versus tax, this might indicate this is a very small number of individuals that will be affected by the penalty.
You know, what we found with TennCare in Tennessee was this, that the program, through a period of 5 years, quadrupled in cost. And what you saw was a program that was supposed to be the last resort. But what happened was employers chose not to offer health insurance, and you had people gravitating to the program because it was basically a free program. So I would take issue with what would be the 4 million number that you're using there. And see, that is one of the things, when you begin to look at the cost and you look at whether it was Tennessee with TennCare or Guaranteed Issue in New Jersey, what you've got are programs that come in and you've got that public option that tries to supplant the private sector. You see cost shifting, you see delayed reimbursements to your hospitals and to your medical centers. You're going to see a reduction in the amount that they are paid for different services. We had a Democrat governor here in Tennessee that came in and reshaped the TennCare program here in Tennessee.
Congresswoman,
so, you know, I would vary with you a little bit on that 4 million number. And also, you know, CBO went in and said that this year that already the cost of the Obamacare implementation had doubled.
So CBO does come up with some good numbers, it sounds like, what you're saying here as we close. I want to thank you very much for your time today.
Good to be with you.
As we discuss the Affordable Care Act tax or penalty.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, Congresswoman. I appreciate it.